All right. Welcome to the Age of Jeremy. No, wait, that's not how we start this bad boy. I'm driving. Today's episode, we're going to catch up on a LoFi. Doing a little LoFi episode here. We're going to talk about the books. We're going to talk about reading with Jeremy. We're going to talk about probably touch a little bit on politics today. And we are going to touch on some of the other studying and gaming and some of the cool stuff that I have going on. So enjoy.
Were you calling to me from outside of a dream? I wanna live, I wanna love you a little longer. I was invincible many years ago when I was so much stronger.
All right, welcome to the Age of Jeremy. That's how that's supposed to start. Hope you can hear some beautiful Ket Car in the background, one of the German bands that I listen to get used to German, and you'll probably hear my Google Maps, and you'll probably hear me drinking some Dunkin' Donuts. Not drinking the donuts themselves, but more along the lines of drinking an ice cold brew that I got from Dunkin' Donuts. I'm in Payson right now, and I'm driving to Heber for our Revive for 3-2 Warrior Academy, and I thought, heck, let's do a LoFi episode because it'll give me something to do while I drive. And I love using my Rode wireless Go 2. This is by far one of the best products ever made. And on that, since I'm talking about Rode, I want to say that Rode has a creator awards. So if you make content with Rode microphones, or you know someone that does, let them know that Rode is giving up to I think $30,000 or something like that. If you're a content creator and you use Rode microphones. So again, my main microphone that I use is Neumann, and I'm going to be switching that over to a Shure SM7B, and I'll probably buy an Electro Voice RE20, I think it is, and just to let you know, I'm getting on the 260 here, so if you hear me pause and not pick back up, it's because I don't know where the hell I'm going. Because, again, I'm driving and I'm in Payson, and Payson is beautiful. I had a chance to go to my family's hometown in Mendota, and Mendota is a small town in Illinois. It's probably much smaller than Payson. Payson's actually grown from from me looking at it now. I used to come to Payson because I had family that lived here when I was growing up. And, but I going into Mendota and seeing my family, and most of the town is my family in Mendota. But I really enjoy that small town life as long as I have the ability to go to a large town if I need to. And which is hopefully one of the things that I enjoy. I mean, if you're living in Illinois, I got to go to Chicago. Chicago's fantastic. If I'm in Chicago and I live in Mendota and I go to Chicago, it's an hour and a half drive. I think that's good. It's about a 2-hour drive from Payson, maybe an hour and a half from where I live in Glendale, Arizona, and Payson. But Payson's beautiful. Payson's in northeastern Arizona, and so is Heber, which is where we're going to Revive. If you don't know what Revive is our 3T Warrior Spiritual Academy. I'm going to be talking about meditation. In fact, that was one of the things I was going to talk a little bit about on this LoFi episode, was meditation. And I don't know how much is left on this SD card that I have in my Zoom H1N. But so if this just ends abruptly, then best of luck, and leave me a comment of what you think about it. So to get started, some of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about. The first thing was reading with Jeremy. So last 2 years ago, I made a book list of all the books that I wanted to read within that year. I wanted to talk about them on my YouTube channel. And I did a few. I did 2 books by a Japanese author that does mystery novels. Can't remember his name right. Saishi Yokomizo, I think. And he does some really good murder mysteries, probably one of my favorites. I got another one of his books in the mail that they just released on Vertigo Press, so I'm really excited about that. And I got that book, and it reminded me, I need to finish reading those books. But so after I started doing that, which I'm going to continue to do that because, again, we have all the time in the world to make content. Content gets brought up into stream. So while I do think that you have to stay consistent with it, and the more that you can dedicate that time and consistency to it, I think is great. But if you can't, getting that content out there, people will come back around to it eventually, because there's so much content that's going out into the world. It's very difficult unless you are a diehard fan of a person, and I hope that some of you are diehard fans of me, which I'm very grateful for and blessed for. But if you're not, and you just kind of come back to the content, that's great. And I just want to say some of the trees out here in Payson are beautiful. If you can get out to trees plants and trees are beautiful in general to me. I don't just seeing life is beautiful. And reading with Jeremy is beautiful too. So I started to do some of that reading with Jeremy and the highlights on my Instagram to add a book club type of feature to it, or to read the books that I'm reading. I never understood how the book club piece worked, or the book of the month. I mean, I get the book of the month piece where people read a book in a month. I don't read very fast, and I can't read, I read multiple things at the same time, so it takes me a little bit longer. So I entitled mine Reading with Jeremy. And so right now I'm reading The Path to Power, I think is what it's called, by Robert Caro for Lyndon B. Johnson. I'm about halfway done with that book. So I'm going to be putting some more content on my Instagram channel in regards to that. I just need to finish the book, and then I need to update some of that stuff on Instagram. So I encourage you to read that with me. Some of the other books that I'm also reading for our Entrepreneur Book Club and the 3T Warrior Academy, we're reading The Changing World Order, where the gentleman that wrote it, and again, my memory this during this drive, and again, I'm driving. I'll have to remember. Ray Dalio wrote The Changing World Order. And what's interesting about it is it talks about different cycles in human history of countries or states coming to power and then losing that power, dynasties coming to power and then losing that power. And it looks like he spent a lot of time, based off of reading the book, that he spent a lot of time researching this from a Chinese perspective, from an American perspective, from a Dutch perspective, and from a British perspective. And I encourage each of you to do that research and that history as well. Something that I would love to dive into more as I get more time to research and to read. And so the book talks about the things that kind of he sees that happen on a regular basis as these economies rise and they fall. And essentially what he's trying to say is that as it rises and how it rises and how it falls, if you follow that pattern, America is in that pattern right now. And so we need to be kind of mindful of that America's in the process of losing its dominance as not only a reserve currency, but as being the dominant world power, and that China's kind of quickly coming up. And it's really cool to see, China over its entire history that he does, that it shows its rise and its fall. And to kind of backtrack here on The Path to Power by Lyndon B. Johnson. So Robert Caro's written 4 books about the Lyndon B. Johnson. It's like the best autobiography, I don't know, maybe ever made. And some of it's really, I don't want to say boring. Some of it's really dry. I understand why he does why he's talking about it, to kind of place what's kind of happening in, Texas and in America at the time, that leads Lyndon B. Johnson to end up doing the things that he ends up doing, which is something that I think good autobiographical writers, or biography writers, a biography, not an autobiography, I always say that. It's something that biographical writers do really, really well, and writers do really, really well, is when they need to set a stage to kind of show why a character, or in this case, an individual, ends up doing the things that he's doing, is kind of based on a little bit, based on their history of what's going on in the world around them, and especially within politics, that leads a lot to it. And so I think that's always interesting, because if these things didn't happen and they weren't where they were in the world when they were born, then the things wouldn't happen the way that they did. And there's this idea that just means that it's luck, could be destiny. Either way, however you look at it, things wouldn't happen the way that they happened unless other events took place that caused other events to happen, that led these individuals to do the things that they do. So Lyndon B. Johnson, there's some really cool things that I've learned from that book so far. So the first one is that Lyndon B. Johnson, one of the things that he was really, really good at was building relationships and networking with people. And so I think that networking gets a bad rap, and relationships get a bad rap, especially because we tend to have this mindset, or we tend to talk now that you only need your closest friends, and those are the most important people to you. Now, I have kind of moved away from that mindset, and my way of thinking as it relates to not only curing loneliness, and not from a sense of using other people, but curing, and I'll tell you why curing loneliness in a minute, but curing loneliness, one, and then two, building really good, strong networks of people takes time and energy, and you're not really just building a network so you can get something from them. You're building a network of having different layers of relationships. And there is a great book called Frientimacy, which talks about these different layers of relationships. And that book specifically is around females, female friends having each other, throughout life, and having regular, reoccurring, dates with each other to continue their relationships, and why that really helps with, females being lonely. But you can extrapolate that information and put it in anything when it relates to dealing with other people or dealing with relationships. And so to have these different layers of like your really close friends that you're really vulnerable with, then you have a layer that's outside of them that are your like acquaintances that you're continuously working to build strong relationships with, but you're not having as regular, say, dates on a weekly basis with those individuals. And then there's that layer that's outside of that is building your network of people through, through just touch points here and there that you're slowly getting to know from a different, longer period of time. They could possibly move into that other inner circle, and could move from that other inner circle into the other inner circle. And so that's the main reason why I think we need to think of networking from that perspective and building a large group of friends and relationships. And then because what happens is, as those inner circle people, either they drift apart, or maybe they pass away, or maybe you fall out of, a friendship with them, you have these other layers that you can bring closer with and become more vulnerable with. And when you have those people that you can be more vulnerable with, even apart from your spouse, when you can have that vulnerability with other people, then you're even able to be able to not feel as lonely as you would if you didn't have those people. Because we tend to separate ourselves so much from each other. We tend to separate ourselves so much from each other about telling other people how we feel, telling other people how we feel about them, having hard conversations. And again, it makes sense because no one's taught this stuff at school, which is the thing that I think that we should teach much more in school than finances. But that's just my personal opinion, even though I think that we need to increase financial literacy as well. We need to create emotional intelligence and conversational intelligence too. And so Lyndon B. Johnson was really, really good at this part of building these relationships, and then caring about those other people, even though he tended to be kind of a dick also to people as well. But he was also very young when he got into politics, and he was very young when he got into higher levels of power within committees that he was a part of in politics. And so again, I think a lot of that was a learning curve. That's why I'm excited to get to book 2, 3, and 4 to see if that specific piece changes over time with him and how he dealt with people. So that's the first thing that I think is the most important thing, is making sure that you're building that intelligence. And then there was one other thing. There was one thing that I read this last week in there that really, really stuck with me. And I think it either had to do with him building his knowledge base around whatever it was that he would go and learn something. And then what he would do is he would make you excited about whatever it was that you were doing. And he was able to do that because he had a good knowledge base in what they were doing, even if he couldn't actually specifically do it, which I think is something that great leaders do, is that when they're trying to do something or move something forward. Like for instance, right now, we're redoing something with our CRM inside of 3-2R Academy. If you don't know what a CRM is, it stands for Customer Relationship Management, or manager in this case. So we're switching that up. So point is I've been spending a lot more time researching copy, researching how the marketing works, how those automations work, how algorithms work inside of any type of algorithm. And so it's not so much so that I can do it. Yes, maybe I will personally maybe do stuff regards to that later because I enjoy programming and learning, but more importantly because it helps me when Josh is dealing with something as it relates to those things, that I can help make him excited or help get him through those hard parts about rethinking about something. And so I think that that's one of the things that a good leader does. Is a good leader is really a jack of all trades, a master of none, but often better than a master of one, I think is how that full saying goes. And so that saying is that it's better to be a jack of all trades than a master of one trade, because when you're a jack of all trades, you have more depth at a knowledge base, and the deeper that you can go in as many of those trades as you can, you will be better than, say, a master of someone who is just a master of specifically one trade. Not saying there's anything wrong with being a master of one trade. I think that saying kind of gets messed up and thrown around way too much incorrectly. All right, so again, take some time, read about Lyndon B. Johnson, and you should really, again, I don't want to tell you what to do, but think about, reading about the people in history that maybe, even if they didn't inspire you, or if their politics are on the other side, or if their belief systems are on the other side, I would still encourage you to read about them, because it gives you a broader awareness of all of those different situations and all the things that they specifically dealt with that person. And so it can help you even become a better, help you understand yourself more and be more empathetic to other people. All right. The second thing that I wanted to talk about was I kind of wanted to dive deep into some of my inner struggles or inner conflicts with politics. Patrick Bet-David is someone who I don't watch, who I seldomly, I tend to not care for right-leaning speakers. I tend to enjoy academic speakers. Academic speakers tend to be more left-leaning than right-leaning, although there are some academic speakers in certain areas that are more right-leaning from some traditional conservative values, not the weird conservative values that are being created in the Republican Party right now, but that's neither here nor there. And I don't really listen to any Democratic specific ones, or left-leaning, I guess, podcast hosts when it's just all left-leaning. The reason being is because I like having real conversations about the validity of what we're trying to have happen inside of a policy, or what we're trying to have happen inside America, or we're trying to move America forward. So I like having conversations about policy. I don't necessarily like having conversations on people who aren't willing to get to a logical understanding of the other side of that policy that you're talking about, or that belief system that you're talking about. And that's traditionally why I seldomly talk about politics with other people when I'm around, unless they ask me a question about it specifically. But the more that I have been thinking about it, so I was registered as a Democrat for the most of my life. And then I was registered as a Republican for a small period of time as I was going through finance school. I voted for Obama I voted for Obama I voted for H.W. during his first one, or not H.W., George Bush during his first presidency, and then I voted for Kerry in the second. That's when I started doing a little bit more of Democrat and kind of going back and forth on Republican and Democrat. And then I voted for Obama the first time. The second time I voted for Mitt Romney, just because I felt that in total, I thought Mitt Romney could do a better job, but I still thought Obama did a great job, and I thought Obama was a really good president. But during that time, I was in college, and specifically in finance, upper level classes, and was spending most of my time on economics and finance. And so when people tell me that when you go to college it's more left leaning, well, in business school it's way more economically right leaning, especially from a economic standpoint of Friedman or Austrian economics. Okay, and so economics have always intrigued me, especially the philosophy behind a lot of why we are choosing to do our economic theory the way that we are. And so what ended up happening was during the So during that time, I was all a Republican. Then Trump came on the scene, and I am just being 100% honest. I don't like Trump. I don't like his family. I don't like what he stands for. I don't like his businesses. I don't like how he utilizes businesses. I do not like, I'm just not a fan of him as an individual. I have met people that have done business with his family. They're not fans of him as an individual or as a person. So again, I've never met him, so I can't say that 100%. It's just, I don't get a good vibe in my gut from Trump, and I never have. And so when he became the Republican nomination, I was in favor of Jeb Bush, and then I spent more time researching about the Democratic parties, and around that time, I started reading a lot more about Marxian theory and economic theory and anarchist, going back deeper into anarchist theory, reading more anarchist books, anarcho-communism books, anarcho-communism essentially. And what it did was it allowed me to, I sat down and I realigned the things that I actually believe, and everything that I fully believe, besides a lot of monetary policy, was mainly more towards left and further left thinking. And so I spent a lot of time with thinking about that, reading about it, reading economic books, and came up with what I truly believed were the things that I believed in from an economic standpoint. And so I still believe in those exact same things, okay? 100%. And because those are my core values. Right, my core values are in a lot of those types of belief systems. And so during that time, I decided to go over to being a Democrat. I was a big fan of Bernie Sanders. After Bernie Sanders dropped, I became a big fan of Elizabeth Warren. And I know Elizabeth Warren is very anti-crypto, and there's some things that she says that I don't agree with. I don't like how she's treated my friend John Deaton. But then again, Republicans they always talk bad about both parties always talk negatively and make fun of the other people, and that's just not something that I like. And so Joe Biden, I did not think was going to be a great president. I made that decision to vote for Joe because I am not a fan of Trump. I don't like the polarization that he created inside of the United States. I was not a fan of the way in which he did the tax cuts. I was not a fan in which the way he got us out of the Paris Agreement, how climate change has now become a freaking right and left, became a bipartisan issue. Excuse me. Became a bipartisan, and again, this isn't going to be edited, so I apologize. Well, it's going to be kind of edited, but I'm not going to cut out the coughs, so just deal with it. And so, because it's a LoFi episode. And so I'm just not a fan of Donald Trump, and I'm not a fan of his policies. Now, that being said, there are a lot of Kamala Harris policies that I do agree with, but I just am not a fan of the elitism that is continuously running and driving the party. If Bernie Sanders was running for president, hands down, I would 100% for Bernie, but Bernie's an independent that tried to get on the Democratic ticket. And so with that being said, I made the decision, so as of right now, at least after this precinct committeemanship, is probably to become an independent. And the reason being is because I've been reading and researching and thinking a lot about and writing a lot about the problem with having a two-party system. And I think when George Washington gave his final speech when he was going to leave office, and he talked about the problem with having the party system is because you create factions inside of the United States. And within those factions, it becomes very difficult to keep the larger factions from overthrowing and controlling the smaller factions, which then it takes the voices away from those people. Now, groups and parties themselves, if they are from a non-voter registered perspective, it's fine, I think, to be part of parties, but the problem with the Democrat Party is you can't give your membership dues, I think, and not be registered as a Democrat. And then if you say that you don't agree with a specific policy, from the experience that I've had, you have been ostracized. So I think there are some benefits of working with parties. Like, for example, Bernie Sanders was an independent voter, and he helped with the Vermont Progressive Party. right? And so I think that there's nothing wrong with that, and I think that we should have that type of ability to do that with the Democratic Party, where I could be registered as an independent and I could still be part of the Democratic Party. Now, I understand why you wouldn't have a non-Democratic Party registered voter be a precinct committeeman, which is the problem that I have, is because in October I become a precinct committeeman for the Democrats, and I'm going to go out there and door to door and tell people to vote for Kamala Harris. And the problem is that I'm not probably going to, as of right now, not going to vote for Kamala Harris. If she had picked Josh Shapiro as her running mate, I probably would have voted for her over her pick of Tim Walz. I think he's a great guy. I don't disagree with the things that he's done. I don't think that he is going to be the best leader for our country. And while I want to see a woman president, I don't think that Kamala Harris is going to be a great leader for our country, because it doesn't seem like she has conviction when she talks, and it doesn't seem like she specifically, from when she speaks, has the vision for where she wants to lead America. And on that flip side, I don't even know if I don't believe Trump when he talks about it. In fact, I can't even understand what the fuck Trump is saying lately, because he's blabbering all over the place. Like, he sounds like me talking. He sounds like me addressing the people how I'm rambling on this fucking podcast, and that's not the leader we need. And so the reason why I tend to poke more fun at Trump is because I don't think enough people and I try to poke fun where I see fit for Kamala, not fun, but kind of like call them out on some of their stuff. Like, I'm not a fan of how she wants to do universal basic income. I don't think her unrealized capital gains tax is going to be a thing. I think she's pandering to people, and then it gets people's hopes up who don't understand how the full scheme of the policies work. They're going to be like, oh yeah, we're going to tax these unrealized gains. It's going to make my life better. And I don't think that that's going to happen. The other problem is because the Democratic Party does it, I'm fine with the Democratic Party pushing for the state to do specific things, or for the country to do specific things, and to have some control over things, okay? But the goal the goal from a Marxist perspective of having the state have control over something is so that it can create a system in which it can educate those people, and then it can remove itself from any type of power that it has, and then let those people be self-sufficient. Because the goal of the government is to help people be more self-sufficient, not to give stuff over to them. And so that's why the abolishment of the state is so important, or the reduction of the state being utilized, because we should be utilizing the money that we give as a community to the state or to the government to create ways in which to help make people more self-sufficient. And we do the exact opposite, because we're not creating things. And maybe there are in social welfare programs that track a lot of this data, but from my knowledge, and this is something that I really want to be an advocate for here in the great state of Arizona, is that we need to make sure that we're tracking to see if people are becoming more self-sufficient. How do we measure that? How do we track that? Because then what can happen is we can remove a lot of these subsidies and these government programs that give to people, but then just the goal is just to keep giving it to the same people over and over, and there is no plan in place to make them self-sufficient, right? And so a perfect example of this where it has worked, but how often does it work, is my cousin. I won't, and he's probably okay with me saying this. My cousin was in prison for a while. I'm not going to say for a while. He was in prison for how long? He was in prison for a while, and it helped him get his shit together. And then when he came out, he became much more self-sufficient than when he went in. Well, maybe not more self-sufficient. I guess I shouldn't say that, but he came out better than when he went in. And that is a example of our prison system doing what it's supposed to be doing, but it doesn't do that for everybody, because he was the one that made those choices to do that. So we have to be able to teach that and ingrain that in individuals so that they can become self-sufficient, and so they don't live off of the government. And I don't know, and again, I don't know the statistics on this, and this is something I'm really excited to go and research and learn about and hear about and be a part of creating, is because we don't want people to be on welfare programs that don't need it. We want to get people more into the job force. We want to help them start businesses. One of the things that the Arizona does better than anybody, in my opinion, that I've dealt with so far, is being able to start a business. And that's how easy it should be in every other state. And when I say things like that, it's like, okay, well, we think that oh my gosh, we think I need to pay attention to how I'm driving. Oh my gosh. Okay, and so I'm just kidding. I just hit the white line. We need to look and say, okay, well, why are we charging so much for this? Where is that actually money going? And is it doing a benefit? Because if if we start a business and it costs us $400 a year, it doesn't cost us anywhere near that in Arizona. It's super easy to start a business in Arizona. If it costs us $400 a year to re-up our business, where the hell is that $400 going to? It can't be going just to service the being able to start the business. So is that money going to a state commerce that's helping people learn how to start businesses, changing how people start businesses, innovating on how people start businesses, right? And then it's okay, right? And so and then it becomes okay, and it just doesn't become this way. That's why it's so important for everybody, wherever you're at, to know where your state and your cities and your municipalities are spending and how they're spending the money, because you do actually have a say in it. But it goes back to, you're only going to get in out of life what you put into it. And so if you're just going to sit there and bitch and not take action, it makes more sense to go and take action, because you will benefit more from it. Okay? Sorry, I something was happening in the music, the German music. There's clapping. Plus, I'm going uphill, and I don't know how. I'm probably driving like crap. The people behind me are like, what the hell is that guy doing? He's waving his hands all over the place. It's getting crazy in here. And so I haven't decided. So this is the qualm that I've been over talking to my mom about, sharing it with, is, do I stay on as a precinct committeeman, promote blue politicians, because I'm going to promote them for the state, because we don't have any other runners. If we had other runners, I'd be like, okay, right? Because the problem is if you're a Democrat, the Democratic Party is like, okay, if you were a Democrat, then you should only vote for Democrats. To be honest, I voted for Jerry Weiss, who's a Republican, as the mayor of Glendale. Until I run for the mayor of Glendale or run for a council member, I'm in support of him. And even then, it's not that I'm not in support of him. I think eventually you should have changing of the guard, and to get new ideas and new innovations inside of a city or into a municipality. And it shouldn't be just to get their ideas out and to badger them. It should be, this is what I want to see. He's doing his thing. I think if we did this, we could be better. Not to go and bash him on the things that he did, just saying, we are here. I want to get us here, and this is how I want to get us to this place. So that's something that I've been really thinking about. And I encourage everybody to talk about politics, because the more that we talk about what we believe in, the more that we're going to see that we have more similarities than differences. And we shouldn't get mad if someone is a Trump supporter. I don't understand. Okay, let me take that back. I understand why people have gravitated towards Trump, because he's a populist, and he makes people think that he's fighting for them. I don't believe that. I think that he is a liar, and I think that he blatantly just says lies, and people believe those lies, especially like a recent interview that he did. And again, this was a clip, so I don't know if maybe there was other context to it, which I encourage you to go and research other context. But he said that the schools are turning our children into transgender people. I live with someone who's best friends with a transgender person, who they themselves was kind of on the fence about that. As they grew up, they decided that, you know, they don't want to label things, and they're fine being attracted to both sexes. So it's essentially a lesbian. And so, and I said sexes there, I didn't say genders. And so, which is, there's difference of those words. But anyway, point is that they did not talk about transgender stuff in school. They talked about equality and being okay with people. Now, again, we're in more of a purple state, or a Republican state, I guess, or more right-leaning than left-leaning. And we're starting to become more left-leaning. Maybe if we're in a more left-leaning school, they would talk more about that. I don't know. And so I'm not 100% sure that where a lot of this is coming from. My cousin teaches in schools, and we don't teach critical race theory in schools. We don't really talk too much about genders, because we're trying to teach, I don't know, stuff that they need for life. Where equality is one of those things, being okay with people being transgender, and being nice to people. And so I don't get it. And maybe it's just because I don't have a child in there right now. But for my work with schools and my work with that stuff, it doesn't seem to, I've taught in schools for junior achievement at the younger levels, and it doesn't seem to be a prevalent thing that's being portrayed or taught. And I definitely can't see the high schools or any school doing gender reassignment surgery in the school and or approving that from that perspective. Now, I do have my own personal opinions on teenagers going through that process. I think that children, I started essentially living on my own for the most part when I was like 13 or 14. Okay. And so, like, I mean, I lived with my mother, but then I got kicked out of the house. I dropped out of school when I was 16 or 17. I started working when I was like 12, on a regular basis during the summer. I started working at my grandparents' shop. I started selling newspapers during the summer when I was 14, 15. And so, and selling other, not drug, but like other like vacuums and, I don't know, door-to-door stuff. I really like selling newspapers. Point being is that I think kids know more than we allow them to think that they know for making their decisions. I mean, that's my personal opinion. I personally love seeing Ariana go to school for her 2 hours a day, or go to do her schoolwork and then go to work and come home exhausted. Because if you watch her, yes, she has some very, I'm just being honest, she has some very childish behaviors with like whining and things like that, but her ability to articulate her ideas, the things that she wants to accomplish in life, what she's trying to do, her ability to have better conversations, her ability to make better strategical decisions, her ability to start thinking for herself better, making those decisions on her own. I have to say that that's because of going to college, and also working a job and struggling. And I think that struggle is good up until a point, especially if you can teach them how to grind right now, and then they're easier to grind later on, and they're easier to make their decisions better on for children. But I let her start making most of her decisions when she was like 14 or 15. She would ask me about the decision. I would ask her what she thought. She would kind of work her way to the answer that she had for herself, and then that would be the decision that she did. And so my point is that I think that children can make that decision, and they understand how they feel about things. Now, I don't think that they should make that decision and that change while they're in school. I think if it's not causing them any emotional distress or suicidal tendencies, that they talk to counselors, they work through that, they continue to have that conversation, they make it part of their life, and then they continue to have that conversation as they make their transition when they are an adult, when they can fully make that decision. But those are conversations that we have to have with children. And again, like I said, I don't have those conversations with children. I don't know how difficult that is for a person who identifies as a different gender and they can't do anything about that because their parents are against it. The only thing that I will say is if it's leading someone to want to kill themselves, I would, by all hands down, do everything that I possibly can to help them be who they are, who they believe that they are. And I don't mean that from just a gender reassignment surgery, just from believing who they are in general. I would want them to do that, and I would support that. And as an adult, whether it's my child or not, as an adult, I would help make sure that they get to live the life that they want to live in the happiest way possible. Again, as long as it's not infringing on anybody else. And I don't personally see that it's infringing on anybody else. But that's my opinion. Now, on the other side, I do like making fun of everything. So if I make fun of that, I apologize. I mean, I don't make fun of it a lot, and I don't make fun of it on my social medias, but I think I find lots of things humorous, and that's why I personally don't get mad at comedians like Dave Chappelle. He's the only one that I can really think of, or Dave Chappelle and Ricky Gervais, when they talk about that stuff, because we have to, the reason why we have that humor is because we can look at the world and see, well, okay, the world is really this messed up. This is a thing that exists. That's really funny. I support that person in it, but that's the thing itself is funny, not the individual. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's talk about Anime Roundtable. I have been watching anime now for a long time. Actually, take that back. I have not watched a lot of anime for a very long time. Then I got back into anime, and then we started our Anime Roundtable in our Discord. So check out our Discord. Me and Trey have it. We're trying to get more people to become involved with it. I'm starting to realize it's just that no one knows when it is or what's happening because they're not in our Discord. They're not seeing our communication, so I have to get more communications out to people. But we're doing Assassination Classroom. Assassination Classroom is about like an octopus person who I thought was an alien, but it actually like a government invention, I think, who seem to have octopus parents. but he's like this giant octopus person, and he loves teaching, but he's also going to destroy the world in a year. So he likes teaching like the lower rung class at this junior high, and then the goal is that all those kids are going to be trained to be assassins so that they can kill the teacher. But then they like not fall in love with teacher, but they like love the teacher, and he like teaches them these really great valuable lessons. So I'm not going to go deeper into it. That's what the Anime Roundtable's for, but I've been watching Assassination Classroom. I'm still trying to finish up Spy Family, if you want to know what I'm watching for anime. And then we're watching Windbreakers too. But having the discussions, especially having the philosophical discussions and being a part of groups that do that, I think that really re-injuvenates people, especially re-injuvenates me. So I would encourage you to be part of our Anime Roundtable. Again, it's on Saturdays and Sundays Sundays once a month. The schedule is inside of our Discord. There is a link in this episode description probably to get it to go into the Discord. Hopefully that link works. And you can come in, jump in our Discord and have some fun. We also have our Addicted to Podcasting group. In fact, there's a text-to-sode that needs to go out today. I'll probably do that when I get settled in Heber. So make sure that you check that out, because it's Thursday today. Usually these episodes come out on sometime. Lots of the time they come out on Tuesday, but who specifically knows? All right, so last things that I kind of want to touch on is I have kind of taken a step back from trying to do research because we're doing this CRM thing, which really frustrates me. I'm just being honest, really frustrates me. But that's part of being a business owner. Like I'm having fun doing the CRM thing and doing the marketing thing, but I was really getting a good stride with the insurance and building Q Financial and building Age of Radio, that adding this other piece onto it has been very trying, but very rewarding. Just with the added load of like making sure that it's moving forward and running this project along with other projects that I'm doing. It's really good because I've been learning a lot. So I'm very grateful for that part, but I really, really enjoy building the insurance team that we're building, that I'm working on, and creating those processes and having conversations with people about the insurance. And so because of that, and because of also working on getting a Series 65, my goal is to get it by the end of October, which I have a lot of studying to do. But the getting the Series 65 will help us move into more of that financial advisory realm, and then we can start working on cooler technologies and apps in the financial realm and start to innovate there and do some other things that I have planned. And so because of that, I've had to pull back on doing my research for Buddhism, for ethnomusicology, and then wanting to kind of, continue conversations about Buddhism and Buddhology, or becoming a Buddhologist. And so I'm still working on how I kind of plan to talk about those things from an academic level in the future and write about them. But I think that some pieces, hopefully some writings can come, even if they're short blog posts, can come here over the rest of this year, just to start, getting into the academic writing, getting into doing research. It's kind of like one of my biggest problems is I don't know the area of focus for some of the writings. And I think, one of my things I like learning about so much. So I think research-wise, things that interest me, I just want to go after the things that interest me. I don't necessarily want to be, I mean, it would be great to be a specialist in something. I don't know if that's too late in life at 41, but I feel that it's not. And I feel like learning's forever. But I think finding different research topics that are less academically or less research intensive right now to write about, I think would be beneficial, and just to get my hands wet writing. That sounds weird. Getting more writing in, right? Because, I am a writer, and being a Libra and being a jester, I love writing songs, as you guys know, and I love writing, or I hope you guys know that. And I used to love writing poetry. So I love writing, and I love that creative outlet. And so not being able to do it, I feel, has created this armor around me. And I mentioned armor for a specific reason, but we'll talk about that more on another podcast. But it's created this armor on me that I want to go deeper into, to understand, to then help people with, because I think that I think that people are trying to go through life, and they're going through life and they're not realizing the calluses or the armor that they're building around themselves and on themselves. And they're not, while they might learn things or they might work out, I don't think that, and again, I love working out and I don't love eating properly. Actually, I do love eating properly. I just need to do it more. But the way in which people go about perfecting themselves, they're not also perfecting the inside. And so I forgot what I was listening to. It had to do with dharmas, but we have like mental dharmas and then we have physical dharmas. And so we can think of our mental world and then our physical world. And both the mental world and the physical, actually this might have been in a Wilhelm Reich lecture that I was listening to, which has to do with the armor if you want to go research that on your own. But anyway, so we have this mental world and we have our physical world, and we have to work on perfecting both of those. And I think in the mental world, we can think of that with our psyche, spiritually, and all the stuff that goes along with that. And along with that, we have to understand our past life regression and the things that we're holding on from, either things from childhood or the things that we brought on from other lives that we're not specifically dealing with. And I think that those are very hard conversations to have with ourselves. And I think that we have a stigma around that being kind of, I don't want to say a female thing, because I don't want to sound like it's a sexist thing. It's not, I guess it's not a manly thing. And so one of the things that I encourage everybody to do is be less manly in the way in which they talk about their emotions, and less manly in the way in which they talk with others, and less manly in the way in which they build relationships. I think that we need to have more groups that are sex focused or gender focused, where whether you were born a female and now identify as a man or vice versa, being a part of those groups in that gender, from a gender perspective. Like if we have gender groups that are men and gender groups that are women, whether they were born male or female, irrelevant, however they identify, because we can get to understand the roles, not the roles, but the way in which we perceive the world being that gender. And then we should also have roles for trans women and trans men that are just for trans men and trans women, because they also see the world differently, and they need to have that bond with others who are in that gender category. But I also think it's fair to have that gender category in the other gender, if that makes sense. But the point is we need to break down a lot of those the ways in which we talk about that and the ways in which we communicate these things, because those are the things that are going to really get us past the mental stress and the mental clogs and the mental armor that we have around our body and in our body that's not allowing us to be the best versions of ourselves. And so when I think about this and I think about goals that I'm setting for myself, it gets very difficult because most of my goals are monetary based. And so I'm really working on redefining what success looks in my life, because success used to be having a house. Now success is having a better house and a bigger house. And so like what good is that success? Where would that success be? Having some place where I can go in nature that's a nice cabin, that's not a huge luxury, like just something that's there that I could be out in the nature with and being a part of nature. Now, again, that requires money, but it's not money for money's sakes to get something, the best of that thing that's out in the world. And I think that me personally, because I grew up poor, I have the mindset that all of the goals need to be monetary based. But like even if I got a bigger house, I would still probably use the same amount of space. So it's kind of like, in my opinion, not that important. But having more houses for my family to then have a house that they can rent for me, or if they couldn't pay rent to have, that's important to me as well. And so we have so me personally, I'm trying to redefine how I'm looking at my goals so that they don't always seem so property based and so physically based. Because one of the things is that the more that we can stop identifying ourselves with property and the haves and start identifying ourselves with what we do in the world, yes, that may need resources, but it's not property based, then we can start making real change for the way in which we want the world to be after we leave it, if that makes sense. So those are the main things that I have going on. I'm also spending a lot of time on the Lotus Sutra for Buddhism, so I encourage you to spend time with your religious texts on a regular basis. That's something I think Christians do really good, and I think good Buddhists do good. I don't think I do good, so maybe it's just a me thing, not a Christian or a good Christian thing. Maybe it's just a me thing. So I encourage you to spend time every day, and I encourage you right now, after this, sit down, write down your goals, and see how many of them are property based. And if they're not property, and if they are property based, try to rewrite some goals that are more you based and more maybe world based, not based off of the acquisition of property, if that makes sense. So as I always say, be thankful, grateful, and kind, and we'll talk with you next time. Bye.
You were born in your dying, honey, I'm already crying for you.
This has been a LoFi episode. If you're new to the LoFi episodes, this is an episode that's going on all the inner learnings that I'm doing and the cultural things that I have going on. So I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm recording this on a Rode Go to a wireless microphone, and I'm recording it into an H1N by Zoom. I will edit this with Steinberg's Cubase, and I will use Waves plugins on it as well, or have used Waves plugins on it. The opening song was Positive Change by Gaslight Anthem, and the closing song was Gardens by Trevor Hall. And one last time, be thankful, grateful, and kind. We'll talk to you soon.